Hello and welcome to Indie Rebel VFX, Hollywood effects without a Hollywood budget. I'm going to tell you right now, if you hear any extra noises in the background, that is my quote-unquote new puppy. Got a puppy about 4 weeks ago, actually, so it's been just about a month. His name is Bodie, and he's a Pit Bull Labrador mix, and maybe someday I'll bring him on the channel for you guys to check out. Or you can go over to my other channel, L Director Vision, where I've got a video already showing him about a week after I got him. So what we're going to do today, this tutorial came about as a request I put out on the Facebook forums saying, hey guys, I need an idea for a tutorial. What do you want me to do? And Micah Pendleton, who also hosts the channel Film World, check it out if you want to see some really cool filmmaking stuff. He's got a lot of great content over there. He said do a screen replacement. And me being the lazy fool that I am, I didn't want to go shoot a computer screen or something like that. And I've already done a screen replacement with a cell phone. So I was like, all right, well, what would be a different like variation of it? And I got to thinking about a short film that I did a couple years ago called Derek. Now, Derek is a supernatural thriller. It's actually a short film based on a feature film script that I have. So I do have a feature I want to make about it, but I made the short film. I've got a link to it in the description below if you guys want to check it out. It was my first movie that I put together when I decided to revamp my workflow. So this is when I brought Avid into the mix and Pro Tools, and also got into node-based compositing. Now, the first time around, I actually used Fusion for this, and it was the first, only, and last project I did in Fusion. So now we're going to do this inside of Natron and recreate one of the shots from the film, and I'll show you why this actually counts as a screen replacement. And that's because I have this girl, and you can see she's in the middle of a seance of sorts, and everything has gone bad. And so this is the Ouija board down here. And she's got her Bible on top of it, and she's looking through, trying to find some way to... Bodhi! Looking through, trying to find some way to fight the evil demon that's, you know, tormenting her right now. So, what I personally am not crazy about having, like, real Ouija boards on set, or even in my house. So, call me superstitious if you want, or religious. I'm a Christian, I have no shame about that, and I didn't want one. So we took a brown cutting board, and I put some tracking markers on. There are actually 4 tracking markers, but we can only see 3 of them. So let me go and pause this here. In order to do a proper screen replacement, we need at least 4 points to track. Now I might be able to come in here and track this right here, but that's a big if. So I only have 3 points to work with. So how am I going to do this? So what I came up with was actually doing a 3D track, and using the 3D track to create data that I could then use for a 2D track, or 2D quarter pin track, I should say. So let me show you what I mean. We're going to go ahead and go over to Blender, where we will 3D track the shot, and once we do, we can put in our own version of like a grid or a checkerboard of some sort. And then we can bring that back here into Natron, where we can now track all 4 corners of it. This is a technique I actually came up with for this film. I don't know if anyone else has done it. I've never seen it anywhere else online before. So as far as I know, I'm the guy that has originated this, and I'm going to share it with you guys. And like I said, there may very well be somebody else who has done it, but I've never seen it. So let me show you guys what we're going to do. Here we are in Blender, and we have the shot already in here, ready to go. By the way, I shot this on a Canon Rebel T2i at f3.5. I didn't even have a 50mm lens for this at the time, so that's kind of cool. Alright, so first thing we want to do is we want to set up our track settings. So you can see I'm in the motion tracking tab. I leave everything else by default. I don't really feel the need to mess with that kind of stuff. And I've already set my scene frames, and I've prefetched it. And that was a dog jumping on the couch. Alright, so let's come down to this right here. I want to change this to previous frame. We're going to normalize it, and then that should be good. I could try to auto track this. In fact, I think I did try to auto track it at one point, but there's just not a lot of stuff in the scene, so we're going to go ahead and manually track it. First thing we want to do is make sure that we track the 3 points that we can see of the Ouija board. So I'm going to put a point right here, and we'll scale that up a little bit, and we'll track it. Alright, and it made it almost to the end. Not quite all the way, but it's enough that I think we'll be able to make this work. And then I'm going to go ahead and go back to the beginning. We will lock that track, and we're going to add another track point over here on this corner. There we are. And you can see Blender's doing a fantastic job of tracking the stuff. And let's go ahead and do this right here on the vodka bottle label. We want to try to avoid anything where there's specular glow. So I'm not going to track the specular highlights and such because those will shift as the camera shifts and thus throw off the track. We'll track this one backwards. And that's looking pretty good. I can definitely tell as this is tracking that this was shot on a rolling shutter camera, but as you can see, we do okay. And then we'll track this part on this vodka bottle. Oh, too big. Right about there should be good. What else can we do? Let's try to get this right down here. Knowing it will probably go out of frame, but that's okay. And because I hit normalize up here on the tracking properties, even though there's specular and it's flickering and stuff like that, it still does a really good job of hanging on to that for me, which is great. That's what I like to see. I can track this bullseye here on the book, on her incantation or spell book, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it is, but we're going to track it. Okay. And then it looks like we maybe lost it right there in the last frame. So I'm going to kill the last frame of that. And we'll lock that in place. Back to the beginning. What else can we do? I can do the corner of this book. That's a decent track point. Lots of good contrast on it. Again, we'll just check to make sure everything is good. We lose it again on the last frame. So I will kill forward. My dog needs to chill the freak out. And let's see. We still don't have enough yet. So I'm trying to remember. It's been so long since I've done this. I can't remember where all my track points are on this thing. Ooh, we can do this vodka bottle. Just like so. That's a decent spot. And you can see that gave me almost everything I need. So I just need some frames down here at the end. Let's go and lock that, by the way. Back to the beginning. Actually, if I only need them at the end, let's start here. I don't know how long or how well this will work, but we'll try this anyway. And yes, these track points are a lot larger than I would usually do, but like I said, there's just not a lot of detail into the shot. And it's a very soft shot too, again, because I shot this on a Canon DSLR. Now, when I shot this, I did shoot this with Magic Lantern, and I framed it for a 2:4:0 aspect ratio, but you can see it records in 16:9. And I actually really like that because now as I'm doing my 3D tracks, it gives me a lot more data to work with than I would have otherwise. So that's extremely helpful, and something to keep in mind that if you are, even if you're going to do your post-production at 2:4:0, like while you're editing, try to keep it with a mask or crop the comp, so that way you have the option to bring back a 16:9 image for visual effects purposes. You'll find it really helps you out a lot. Alright, I need to track probably one or two more things. I'm going to try this little white patch back here. Great, most excellent. So now I go Shift S, and I have a really obnoxious solver. So let's go ahead and put in our camera data. I shot this on a Canon APS-C sensor. And then I know that my lens was probably shot at 28. So let's go ahead and resolve that. And we have an error of 1.16. That is pretty darn good. When I actually tried this earlier today, I had a solve error of 0.9. So I'm going to come down and use a feature that I really like here in the Solve tab called Refine. And now we have a solve error of 0.3. Now, I do want to check this. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a tracking scene. And we'll take a look here and just play through, and it's looking pretty good. So now we need to go ahead and orientate this. So I'm going to use these three corners of my Ouija board, and we will make that the floor. So now, as long as I put something down here, which there already is a plane in place, but as long as I put something right there, I know that this is going to work out great. Oops, wrong one. Let's bring up this. Place again. Yeah, perfect. Cool. And if we go into wireframe, you can see how that worked. So pretty darn cool. And if the camera's over here, then that would mean that, let's see, I go 1, 2, whoops. 1, 2, and 3. Cool. And we're going to go ahead and create geometry for these. So 3D markers to mesh, which is just those selected objects. All right, let's go back to our default view. Make sure everything is here. There's my track points. So these 3 tracks I know represent the Ouija board. So let's go ahead and clear out our screen here because we don't need all of this. I'm going to go to my tracks and tab into edit mode. And let's start building this up. So I'm going to select the 2 points and press F. Select 2 points and press F. Select 1 point, press EX. And just scale along the X until it hits the green. And I'm only doing that because I see this other one's right here on the green. And then I'm going to take those 2 points and then hit F, AA to select them all, and fill that face. So if we go to my camera view, we can see that I now have a perfect track on this Ouija board. Now, this 1 point down here is not quite where it needs to be. So let's go ahead and escape. I'm going to find a frame where she lifts up and it shows me the kind of that back corner as much as possible, like right here. Select this point and dragging it along X until it fills that out. And you can see it is a bit of a distorted shape, and that has to do with the lens distortion, but we can see that that actually works here for us, so that's fine. At this point, I might go ahead and try to just fill these corners out completely. It really depends on what I was trying to do with it, especially if I was going to do the screen replacement here inside of Blender. But since I'm going to take it into Natron, I know that doesn't have to be super perfect because it is kind of a funky shape. But what we have now is the ability to scale this along its axis if I set the origin to the geometry. And it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to stay right there no matter what I do to that. It's going to stay tracked in perfectly into the shot. Hopefully no drifting or anything like that whatsoever. So what we're going to do is on this image we have right here, let's see, it should only be from that frame, 1 to 84. Yeah. Let's go ahead and go over to make this material and make this our node graph editor. We're in materials, let's use the new material. If I select my actual object, there we are. And let's go ahead and bring in an image texture. And it can be anything we want, anything crazy. Grids usually work out really well for this. But let's see what I have to work with actually. Textures. I think the first time around when I did this, I used something from Jurassic Park actually. You know what? Let's just go ahead and make a grid because we know that's going to be easy to track. So I'm going to actually bounce back over to Natron real quick. And we will add a grid. Or a checkerboard. Wow. Chris can't type today. No, Chris can't think. As you can see, it's almost 9 o'clock at night and I've had a long day. Cool. So we got a checkerboard. And let's go ahead and write out one frame of that. And we'll just stick it here in this folder. We'll call it checkerboard. JPEG is fine. And let's go ahead and set the project frame range to manual. Frame 1 of 1. That's all, should be good. If not, we'll find out real quick. Go back to Blender. And let's bring in image texture. Hook that up. And then shader, emission, and then I think we can just bypass that diffuse. Okay, now we go find our shot. I know it's going to be here in the library, tutorial, checkerboard. Alright, and you know what? I think because it's not an actual, like, perfect square plane that we're using right here, we probably need to bring in some image coordinates here. So we gotta get a little bit more complex than I usually would like, but I think we'll be okay. So let's go texture coordinates generated. Hey, there's our checkerboard. That's looking a heck of a lot better. And if we wanted to try to orientate that, we could add a, let's see, I think it's called a mapping. And then if we rotate it along Z, it kind of lines that up just so it's a little bit better the way it should be. Cool. The other thing I might want to try at this point is scaling them, up a little bit. If it'll let me. Too much. There we go. Something like that. That's just going to make it a lot easier to have one track point get locked in inside of Natron when we do the corner pin. So the next step would be to render this out as an image sequence, and I'm going to pause this while that happens, and then I will see you guys back inside of Natron here very momentarily. Alrighty, well now that our render is done from Blender, I've brought it here inside of Natron. In fact, if we wanted to, we could even color code this like I've done with the other stuff here. We'll just throw it into a backdrop, and I'll just make it orange so I know it's the Blender render. I'm not going to label it, I really don't need to. But let's go ahead and take a look at what we got. So this is straight out of Blender. You could have rendered this out on an alpha channel, but I really didn't care for my purposes. This is going to be good enough. And we can see as we play this now, even though we only had the 3 corners to work with, because I did this as a 3D track, I now have access to a whole bunch of other corners that are here. One side note too, I did make sure to turn off the motion blur, so this is all going to be super crisp and clean, which is good. So let's go ahead and corner pin track this now that we have all this extra data, because before, you know, we couldn't corner pin it. And yes, I am quite aware that I could have projected my graphic, this is the graphic right here, onto an image plane inside of Blender and done all the compositing in there, but I don't like compositing inside of Blender. I like compositing inside of Natron, and so I use Blender in this case to generate a better tracking asset. That was the whole point of this, is to give us a better image to do our corner pin tracks. And now that we have it, we can actually do that. So I'm going to add a tracker, and I just like throwing stuff off to the side like that. I'm going to, scrubbing through, I notice that I do lose the bottom of the frame a little bit here. We lose the bottom half of that checkerboard, so I'm only going to put my checkerboard points up here in the upper half of the frame. So let's go ahead and make this large so you guys can see. I'm going to click on this little plus icon here, and this is super cool. This allows me to actually just go ahead and just start clicking to add my points. And it's a lot faster than maybe some of the other methods. Now remember, we only need a minimum of 4 points, ideally spread out over the course of the surface, the plane that we want to track. But we can go ahead and add quite a few more, and that will just really make sure our corner pin stays locked into place. And you can see we've got all these nice high contrast areas over here to work with, so that's definitely very, very, very cool. Let's see if I can remember how to get out of this now. This is always the tricky part for me. Nope, that didn't work. Escape. Spacebar. Yeah, we'll just spacebar out of that. I don't need my last track point right here, so I can take that out. All the rest of these are going to be just fine. So I'm going to select them, track 9 through track 1. And let's go ahead, and we're at the last frame. We'll just go ahead and track backwards. You can see it is cruising. Love how fast this stuff works. Oh, we lost track 0.5. That's okay, we got plenty of others. So I'm going to go ahead and remove track 0.5. We don't need it. Let's go and select the rest of these again, and just kind of scrub through, making sure everything is staying locked in. And it is. At this point, I'll go to frame 1, just arbitrarily, because I know it's a frame where I do see the entire Ouija board in the shot. And let's go ahead, jump over to our transform options, change the motion type to match move, and we want to leave this as corner pin. A lot of times we'll change it to transform, but for this particular shot we'll use it as a corner pin, and I'm going to set my reference frame to 1. Now if I come all the way down to the bottom, I can export my tracking data. You can see we've got a new corner pin node right here, right? Cool. What we need to do now is merge our graphic of the Ouija board on top of the actual cutting board that we have. So I'm going to select it and add a merge, and we'll run that in. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And you can see it's all over the place because, again, it's late and I forgot to fix my alpha channels, but we know that's a real easy fix. If I really want to fix it for real, I could come in here and output as an RGBA and we won't have that issue anymore. I want to go ahead and reformat the graphic down just to make it a little bit easier to see as I do my corner pinning. And we'll make it HD, 1920 by 1080. You can see it fills the frame quite nicely. And then the next thing I want to do is add a corner pin node. So here's our corner pin transform. And if we go ahead and make this bigger, fill that, I can now go ahead and line this up to the Ouija board. So I know that this corner of the graphic is the bottom right, so we're going to put that on the bottom right over here. So we'll just kind of get that close. This is the upper right, and then this one is the upper left, and then that would make this one the bottom left. So pretty cool. And now we just go through and we kind of line this up exactly the way we want it to look. It's crazy. I've not touched this shot in years. The last time I did this all in Fusion too. Lord help me. Okay, cool. So now that we've got that lined up, let's go and get out of here. Let's run our corner pin into it. We'll put that down there. That lines up with the merge quite nicely. And if we play the shot, everything should be tracked in beautifully. And we can see that it is. That all just works perfectly. So at this point, we can repeat the process to paint out the tracking markers. I've shown you guys how to do rig removals and such before, both inside of Natron and with Blender. You can find those videos elsewhere on my channel, so I'm not going to show you that now, but one last thing I will do just to clean this up a little bit is I want to mat out the Bible. Obviously, we can't have this sitting on top like that, right? That doesn't look good. I did want to bring this to somewhat of a level of completion here. So what I did is, because I did not want to spend the time rotoing her hands in this book, is I just went over to After Effects and I used the roto brush to very, very quickly create a black and white garbage mat. And I can run that into the mask input of this merge. If we view the merge and select it, I can come down to masking. We're going to make it by the R and then invert it. And that sets that in nice. And the other thing I might want to do is just turn down the blend a little bit, just so my graphic sits a little bit better on top of the wood. So let's go ahead and view our final shot. And we can see that all works great. So just to recap, what we've done is we've corner pin tracked when we only had 3 corners that we could work with. So this is a screen replacement, as Micah had requested, except instead of replacing a screen, we're replacing or adding to a Ouija board into a shot where we did not have enough data to work with. And the way to fix that, again, was to 3D track it inside a Blender, add more data for us to work with, and then we can come back in and actually get our corner pin track. So I hope you guys have enjoyed and maybe learned a few cool tips and tricks as far as how to do some, practical, real-world visual effects compositing. I'm El Director. This has been Indie Rebel. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share as well. I will see you next time.